Welcome to By George, an 80 Players podcast here at the George Theater. I am your host and marketing associate, Miranda Zabst, and today I have with me
Kevin Crouch. I'm the director of The Foreigner, our next show here at 80 Players.
I am so excited to have you here. Yeah. I know that we've already kind of gotten into it, but before we get into everything about The Foreigner and everything about 80 Players, I know you've worked here for a while. I'm already losing track, okay? Because the first show that I saw when I started working here was The Play That Goes Wrong.
And that was my second show here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
so I didn't miss too much of the Kevin Crouch lore.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Okay, great. I want to hear about you and your love of theater, because I know that you're also a professor or an assistant professor.
Associate now.
Associate professor.
Yeah. Associate professor.
So tell me about what got you into theater and kind of led you to where you are today.
Sure. I've always been a ham, I guess, if you want to say. I putting on skits as a kid, that kind of thing, having fun. But theater was not something I ever did in like grade school, that kind of thing. I participated, I think, in a couple, after, or, like church plays, that kind of thing. But it was never really something that I thought of as a thing. I was all about sports. I played a lot of golf, played a lot of baseball. My fun fact is that I was ranked second in bowling when I was 10 years old in the nation. Randomly, right?
Okay.
In the
nation. Wait a second.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Pretty crazy. But yeah, so I did a lot of sports growing up, and that was my thing. And I was really convinced that mainly golf was where my passions lie, and I was going to try to go to school for that and get a scholarship, go to university. That was kind of my plan.
Yeah.
And I was a military brat. My dad was the U.S. Air Force, and so we moved around a lot. I was born here in Texas, born in Houston, but my dad was stationed in San Antonio growing up, and then Anchorage, Alaska, and Phoenix, Arizona, Rapid City, South Dakota. So we bounced around quite a bit, but he retired when I was in high school, and we came back to Texas, to San Antonio. And we moved into the district with the best high school golf team, state champs. But they were building a brand new high school that was going to relieve that school. So it was going to be new kids, new team. It was like the perfect time to have a new kid come in. So Ronald Reagan High School in San Antonio. And I came in, went and played the couple courses with my dad. We was ready for the tryout. And I played probably the worst 2 rounds of golf that I had played in a while. My dad followed me around. He was like, it was weird. It wasn't you. It was just something, right?
Yeah.
And I even had a nice back 9 on the second qualifying day. And I thought, he reminded me, he said, Kevin, you don't have to, do awesome. You just got to make the team.
Yeah.
And so did my best. And I missed 2 3-foot putts on the last 2 holes to miss the team by 2 strokes. And I was devastated because I had planned my schedule around it. It was like I was going to do golf because in Texas, of course, we make everything competitive. It was like 8th period was you go and you practice.
Right.
And so I just didn't understand, like, golf had always been in my life and now it was gone.
Yeah.
I cried on the car ride home.
Of course.
Yeah. And my mom reminded me, she's like, God closes one door, he opens a window. And sure enough, literally the next day, we had to go to school and register for class. And I was meeting with the counselor, and she said, well, what do you want to put into 8th period? Because you're not on the golf team.
Right.
And I already had theater arts on my schedule because, again, I was a ham. I enjoyed that kind of thing. I asked, what is theater production? And she said, oh, well, that's the class that does all of the productions. And I was like, there's a class for that?
Yeah.
I was like, my previous high school, that was just the after school play program. You'd audition, and which I had done. And she said, oh no, it's a class and it's already been cast. And I was like, well, I'm brand new. I didn't get to audition.
Yeah, I didn't do it.
Any shot that I can. She said, well, the theater teacher's next door. You can go talk to him. And I randomly had happened to get a letter of recommendation from my drama teacher in South Dakota, just because they said, grab letters of recommendation from teachers that were, that liked you. Just have them in case you need them. And so I had this letter, and I went over and I met with him. His name's Phil Rayburn. And he read the letter and he looked at me and he said, yeah, I got one spot. I can put you in. He was like, you won't have a part in the first play, but we'll figure something out for you. And I don't know how old Phil was at the time. He was, early 30s, but he saw something in me and he kind of took me under his wing and showed me the world of theater. And I fell in love really quick. And that was my junior year of high school.
Whoa.
And I still had ambitions of maybe doing golf and was still kind of conflicted.
Yeah.
But at the end of junior year, he announced that we were doing Hamlet. And it was like, oh boy. And he kind of looked at me like,
Yeah.
I'm picking this with you in mind, bud. You know, you got to audition for it, but you got to audition for it. So we had auditions that summer, and I got the role of Hamlet. And I was at that point, I was kind of like, I think somebody upstairs maybe is making some extra decisions for me here, saying you should go that way, go that way.
Yep.
Golf will be around. It's a sport you can play your whole life, but go that way.
Yeah.
So we did that, and we took that to the International Thespian Festival, took that to the National Festival in Nebraska, and it was a tremendous experience. And then that's what kind of convinced me I want to major this. I want to do this in college. I want to go study this.
Okay.
And had some family friends that were at Sam Houston State University, right up the road in Huntsville, Texas, even though we were over in San Antonio. And so I came over and really loved that school. Ended up going there for 4 years and did my undergrad there. And again, had amazing teachers, professors. One of the names was Mark Ramont, who was actually also at Rice University at the time and taught up at Sam. And he convinced me. He said, you can do this for the rest of your life if you want. And you will, he said, but if you want to do it at an elite level, he said, you should go to grad school. And you should look at the top grad schools, Yale, NYU, UCSD. I said, okay. And so I looked into those, and the one that really kind of drew my attention was NYU. And so I went and I auditioned right out of undergrad. Yeah. And I knew that it wasn't typical for undergrads to move right into grad school. Usually there's a few years in between. And so I auditioned and got a callback, which I was kind of like, whoa, hey, that's something, right? Yeah. You got the callback, which you get to the final 50, And I remember meeting with Zelda Fitzhandler, who, for you theater nerds out there, she's the godmother of regional theater in America. She founded Arena Stage in Washington, D.C. Look your history up. She's like it when it comes to American theater in the regions. I auditioned for her, who was the head of the program at the time. And I remember telling her, I said, if not this year, you'll see me next year. I'm really going to, I know I'm an undergrad and this and that, And she just kind of smiled at me in her way. And it timed out with my spring break. And so I had been in New York and I did my auditions, and then I went and hung out with some friends who had already moved to New York from college, and we got to hang out for the rest of the week. And I had my cell phone on me and I was just waiting for it to buzz, and nothing was happening. Last day I was there, I woke up I looked down at the phone, it said 212. And I was like, that's a New York area code. And I answered the phone. I was like, hello? Kevin, this is Zelda Fitzhandler. Hi. I was like, hi. She was like, we'd like to offer you a spot at NYU. And I was like, yes. Oh, I screamed Zelda. I was so excited. Oh my goodness. So I got into NYU. And so that took me straight to New York right out of undergrad. And I was there for 3 years studying with, just incomparable people. Had an incredible class and graduated from there in 2008. And then I started working in the regions and started working, all over the U.S., whether it was in my first professional gig was in Cleveland, Ohio at the Great Lakes Theater there. Okay. I just bounced around the regions for 9-10 years. And in the process, met my wife. And we were starting to get a little burnout on New York and said, started looking where we were most happy is when we were in a region, at a regional theater, somewhere that was connected to the roots of a city. Yeah. As opposed to New York, where, yes, it is the Mecca. It is where it all happens, and Broadway is Broadway, and it's exciting. But even all of my friends, I had a lot of classmates, a lot of friends on Broadway, and there's something that was just missing in the connection between the why. It was very monetary. We were making money. You're making money for a producer, and there's value in all of that. But you didn't have like the real direct connection with an audience the way you maybe experienced if you went out and did regional theater, where I'm doing a show, but I'm meeting the board members. I'm getting invited to a gala or a dinner. Right. I'm getting to take golf with, some of the patrons. They auctioned off, like a round of golf with actor Kevin, and I'm meeting them, and and then you're seeing them around at the farmer's market, and they're seeing you. Hey, we saw you on stage last night. It was so wonderful. And you could just see like how the theater plugged into the community. Yeah. And so that was exciting. And so we started kind of seeking out where would our next move be. And Houston was home. I had family in Texas, and Sam Houston was up the road, and I had my MFA. And so I came out one summer and just met with my old chair, Penny Hostekester, and told her, I said, hey, I at some point in the near future might want to think about teaching. Just I'd love for you to keep me in mind if anything ever came up. And she's like, yeah, sure, but there's nothing available right now. And I said, okay. That was June. July, she calls me. Yeah, of course. And says, I just had somebody tender their resignation, kind of an emergency. And she said, I'm scrambling to fill a position, just a lecturing position, but would you be interested? I was like, holy smokes. My wife was nannying in the Hamptons in New York, and I called her and I was like, do you want to move to Texas? And she's like, what? And I was like, in a month? And she's like, what?
Oh my gosh.
So we did. Yeah. And that brought us down here, and that position lasted for 2 years, and then it turned into an assistant professor where I had to kind of reapply for my position. Yeah. They do a search, which is weird. And now I've been there. This is my 11th year teaching.
Oh my goodness.
I'm an associate professor.
Yeah.
Which I love. And one of the reasons I loved the Houston market was then it was also a chance for me to work as an actor down in Houston. Mm-hmm. And so I started working at stages, and I worked at Unity, and then my wife and I, we got pregnant with our first Jack. And so I stopped auditioning. I stopped doing theater because it was just too much.
Oh, I can't imagine.
Between, teaching and whatnot, and then also trying to come down to Houston, it was a lot. So I took a break from performing or anything like that, but I was still obviously engaged at SAM. I direct every year at SAM, direct one or maybe sometimes more productions, or whether it's directing or fight directing or whatever it may be. Even got to act once in a show at SAM, which was wild. So after Jack was born in 2017, during the World Series, yes, I had Game 5 tickets. Game 5 tickets. He was born during Game 3. I didn't get to go to Game 5.
Oh,
it
yeah,
was
no,
pretty epic Game 5. But it was worth it. So whenever I was looking to kind of get back into the game, I actually had met Kevin Dean. We had brought him up. It was on Zoom. We had brought him up to do just a chat with our students about, a working professional down in the Houston area. Mm-hmm. And it had me looking at 80 Players' website and seeing what is their season next year. And it saw The Play That Goes Wrong. And I was like, oh, that's a bucket list show, right? So I was like, I think it's about time I try to maybe start auditioning again. And so I filled out their audition form and I checked that off, and that was what I was shooting for. And they said, Texas Carol. And I was like, I'm available for that too. I don't know what that is.
I guess.
So, and that summer I got a couple audition calls from Jamie and Kevin, and came down and I auditioned for Play That Goes Wrong and booked that. And then they had me down and I auditioned for Texas Carol and booked that. And so suddenly I was in kind of like back-to-back shows that season. Mm-hmm. So Texas Carol was my first show with them.
Right, okay.
And then I followed that next spring with The Play That Goes Wrong. Mm-hmm. And then obviously we did Texas Carol again. During that run that I was chatting with Jamie and Kevin and about just what the next season was. And Jamie was talking to me about it. He's like, you want to direct? And I was like, I'd love to. Mm-hmm. And he said, well, here's some options. What do you think? And I was like, oh, The Foreigner, duh. I was like, I love comedy. That's kind of where my heart lies. And I think that would, and he said, let's do it. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of what led me to here right now.
That's incredible. I do this with everybody, and I'm sorry, but it's just, I loved seeing the way that God works in everybody's story.
Absolutely. It's there.
And I would have never, I hope you don't take it as an insult, I would have never pegged you for a sports person.
No, absolutely. Sure. No.
But golf is so, because my dad and my brother do golf. My brother did golf all throughout high school, and he quit before going into college. But that's, so I can relate to going to all of the tournaments and getting entered and all that kind of stuff. And then you just have an off day, and it's oh, that's insane.
And all of a sudden you have to switch lanes.
And then but then to also have it be the exact the next day.
The next day.
It's so it's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's
it was such a God moment, because I vividly remember crying in the car and my mom saying, when God closes one door, he opens a window. I was like, okay.
Yeah,
Mom,
whatever.
And then sure enough, you don't realize it, he's opening it and it's happening.
Right.
And then, now I look back on it, I'm like, man, if I wouldn't have ever, if I'd have made those putts, I would have stuck with golf. I wouldn't have done theater. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't have met my wife. No. I wouldn't have my kid. Right. I'm like, everything shifted that way and it all lined up. And I was like, that's God. That's him saying, no, this is where you're supposed to be.
So getting into directing,
yes.
and you've directed. I mean, you do it at Sam Houston, like you said. What is your process when it comes to directing, and for a comedy specifically? How do you kind of get into that role?
Sure. Well, as I said, I'm an actor first, right? I'm an MFA actor, and so my process kind of starts from that perspective, right? Okay. And having worked with a number of different directors, and you can ask any actor and any director, there are people that are more. They're a director first, and then how they associate with an actor is different, because they maybe have always been a director, and so they come from a concept point of view, or a design point of view, and so that's where they start. Dramaturgical point of view, that's where they start. For me, I start as an actor. I start with characters, and I start with intentions and story, and where I would in that process. Mm-hmm. And then how I collaborate with a director is kind of the way I want to direct, is how I would want if I was the actor, what would I want?
Exactly.
Right?
Okay.
Which is a collaboration, which is we are a unit that is telling a story. We're an ensemble that's telling a story. It's not as director, it is not my story, right? It is our story. It's my job at the end of the day to make sure that all the components are coming together to tell that story, whether that be the design or the acting, however, the directing, the blocking, etc. We're making sure that all of those things are serving, and I'm the eyes outside that get to finalize that. But I'm not the one standing on stage with the intention. That's JJ or that's Kevin or whoever my actor is. And so I want their opinion. I want their instincts. I want what they think is there and what they're trying to, I want to trust that. Right. And so I tell every actor, whether it's professionally or educationally, wherever I am, I would say, when we start the process, everybody's opinion is to be heard, right? And that goes for designers too. I was like, I want your ideas.
Right. Yeah.
I don't want to start with just mine. That's boring. I want to be challenged. I want you to teach me. Yeah. Maybe that's the endless academic in me, but I want to learn from you all as well. Yeah. And so I always start with the idea like there's no bad ideas. We try everything. And I'll be the first one to say, I had an idea and it was bad.
It didn't work.
Didn't work, but we tried it, and we wouldn't know it worked until we tried it, right? And so I kind of lead with that mentality. And with comedy, my personal belief and where my training comes from is we have to be honest. You have to start with honesty. The minute that we're not honest, an audience sees right through you. Yeah. You can get away with a lot of tricks and a lot of, one-liners, and Larry Shue is the master of the one-liner. But if it's not grounded in truth, the audience is not going to be laughing with you for 2.5 hours. Not 2.5, 2 hours and a few minutes. But
and some change.
Yeah, and some change. But there has to be something that's honest, that the actors, the characters are genuinely pursuing something that is truthful to them. Right. And that's when we see humanity reflected in front of us. That's when we as an audience can relate to it. We understand what that point of view is. And that's what makes it even funnier for us, right? So I just always am making sure that we're pursuing truth inside of whatever the situation is. And within comedy, you're probably pursuing it at a higher level, like a higher percent. I'm 110% going after that truth. And because of the situation that the playwright has given us, it becomes funny, right? Yeah. I'm 100% pursuing the fact that I don't speak English in The Foreigner. Yeah. And when I do that, then what happens is, and we end up in the land of gibberish, and we end all of these different situations, and therefore comedy ensues. It's just the circumstances that lead to it. Yeah.
That's so, I've never had it explained in such simple terms of, it is truth. And of course, any production that we're doing is seeking honesty and truth. But when you have that expectation or that, the drive for it is 110%. Yeah, it makes that just gives perspective to the whole. Yeah, that's what makes a comedy like The Foreigner work, is because everybody is so just out there and so.
I can't remember the exact actors or the exact person who said this, but there's an old story that goes around that says, there was a couple old actors and they had this scene, and there was a moment where he asks for, can I have some more tea? And he figured out that whenever he does that, he gets a laugh every night. Can I have some more tea? And he gets this great laugh. And so every night, here's my line, can I have some more tea? And the laughs started getting less and less and less and less. And he was backstage wondering, man, I'm missing that joke now. It used to be so good, And his co-star said, stop asking for the laugh, just ask for the tea. And he was asking for the laugh, and he wasn't just asking for the tea. Don't ask for the laugh. Just genuinely ask for the tea. And because the situation calls for it, it was funny. Exactly. So that's where you always have to remind yourself, I'm not asking for them to laugh. I'm asking for whatever my character wants.
It's fascinating. It's just fascinating. Again, also like an academic, I love looking at the way that things work and how, putting people in that situation. I think also what you were talking about, wanting it to be a collaborative effort and the humility and the grace that comes with that, with admitting that you're wrong, but then also asking for advice and asking for help. I was able to go to one of the first rehearsals that you guys had, and a lot of the actors had questions about their characters, and I could kind of see that you were ready to answer and give them something, but you kind of held back to see what they would ultimately come up with. Absolutely.
Yeah. Again, I know what I think.
Right.
I'm very curious what you think. Because I might be wrong. That's the other thing, is we don't know necessarily the right way of anything. And so there may be a different way we can play that, right? There's a different idea around how these characters in our production are going to come together. So I want to know where each person's coming from and what their experience with it is. And when you're dealing with a classic like this, right? The Foreigner is a classic American comedy written in 1984. We're not the first ones to do this.
Right.
We're not, and I'm not going to try to reinvent the wheel either. And so you have to pay homage to what is there. And you also know it's been seen before. There's been productions but at the same time, that's because it works. And so you got to trust the playwright. As actors, we all either maybe some people have experience with it, some people don't. Ironically, this cast is an incredible cast. And I was very surprised as we all started to kind of share on the first day that there's only one of us that actually has ever been part of a previous production of it. So I was really kind of like, oh, maybe that's wonderful. So we all have fresh eyes. We don't,
Yeah.
And so it's been really exciting for us to kind of dig in and ask questions and be curious about some of the, I wouldn't say pitfalls, but just, holes that you're kind of like, well, I could go that way. I could go this way.
Right.
What do you think? What do I think? We sit there and we chit chat about it and we try to understand what we all agree on and then we push forward.
Has there ever been an instance, and it doesn't need to be specifically with The Foreigner, but like when directing and allowing that collaboration where you have to kind of put your foot down and say that, no, this is what is intended and this is what we need to pull out of it?
Totally. Absolutely. Yeah. There's definitely moments when, you start to think, we're heading down this road and this is really interesting and different and we're going to try all of this. And then you go back and you look at the whole thing, you run the whole act or you run the whole play and then you go, oh, that was bad. We shouldn't have done that, right? That sent us off. It didn't give us the right through line, right? I wasn't connecting. I skipped steps in the story. And now as an audience member, they're going to be lost because we missed something there. So that's where my job comes in, right? That's where I have to come back and say, guys, as cool as that was or as interesting as that was, it actually is deterring from the story, right? It's bogging it down when we look at it from the 35,000 foot view, right? We're no longer able to kind of follow. So I think that's one of our big jobs as a director is to make sure that all the little things that are being done by each one of the performers and the designers, everybody, right? We're all of our pieces of the puzzle are coming together, right?
What's something that you're most excited for in The Foreigner? In directing The Foreigner?
I think there's a few things, right? One of them is the fact that I've gotten the really awesome chance to work with my best friend, which is Stephen Kemp, who is our set designer.
Yeah, okay.
Stephen and I went to undergrad together at Sam Houston State University. And we met at orientation and we were thick as thieves right away. We were fast friends. He was best man at my wedding.
That's
and
amazing.
So, and he became a set designer and when I went off to NYU, he went off to UCSD for set design, got his MFA in scenic design and has been designing all over the US, all over the world, really. He's designed on Broadway. He's been doing a lot of opera. And so he's been working all over the US. He's based out of Kansas City now where his wife and kids are. I've always thought, man, that'd be awesome to be able to at some point collaborate. There was always the dream originally when we first got out, it was like, man, I'll be in one of your shows you're doing on Broadway. I'll be an actor and this and that. And then you realize there's just so many ways that the cookie is going to crumble and you have no control over any of that. And I was like, the chances of me being in a set that you design as an actor are like slim to none because that's so hard for that to line up. I was like, what's going to happen at some point is I'll direct something that you design. And it will actually probably even be more fun because the director and the designer work together in a lot more intimate fashion than an actor would. So in those early discussions with Jamie, I was like, any chance that I can throw out a name for a designer? And he's like, sure. And so I threw out the name, and Mike Morrison, our production manager, also knew Stephen and had worked with Stephen years ago at Stages with his wife, Jessie. And so he was like, I love Stephen. Stephen's amazing. He was like, we could get Stephen. That would be awesome. I was like, he's my best friend. I think I might have an in. We'll see. And it worked out with Stephen's schedule. He's got some operas going on, but we were able to squeeze Stephen in. So the set is beautiful.
Yeah.
It's really beautiful. And the production team, they're doing some awesome work. Charlie Topper, our props designer, is doing incredible work in terms of just curating all of the textures on the set, from the actual props themselves to the paint design and all the it's all coming together really well. And then light, sound, the whole 9 yards. Samantha Dante is doing the wonderful costumes, and we're set in the 80s, so you get some of those great patterns, the Oh, they're terrific. And so that's exciting to work with Steven and the whole design team, but that has been one of them. And then I think from the other side of it was in casting, I was really just kind of blessed as I sat down with Kevin Dean, who was, the artistic producer on the piece. And I said, talking through who's who in Houston and who we thought was ideal for some roles. And, to get Susan Kuzin to come in and play Betty.
Yeah.
She's like the funniest lady in Houston. And I was like, and she said yes to us. We're amazing. And then, I kept wondering who's going to be Charlie, who's going to be our clown, who's going to be the foreigner. And then JJ walked in and his audition was just like, boom. And I was like, well, that was easy.
That's done.
There you go. That's done. Check. We put together this cast and I was like, it's so good.
Yeah.
Which, that's the old joke. It's like 80% of your job is casting. Like, if you cast the right people, you can sit back and just let the magic happen, and to an extent. And it really has been. Watching the magic happen has been a treat. And watching, JJ came in just absolutely like a pro, with so much ready to present and play with, off book really quickly, and which is important in comedy because then you can really free yourself from being so locked into your script. You can start playing and listening, and so I think that's been really exciting to work with this cast. Was something that I was really looking forward to.
That's amazing. Yeah. We got to work with JJ for a little bit for the promo shoot that we did, him and Kevin, and it's not, me and Jesse were racking our brains on like, what are we going to write and how do we promote this and how do we make it funny? Because we love when jokes are in the room. And so he had come up with like 3 simple scripts that morning, and JJ comes in and just, knocks them out of the park every single, and it's like with fresh eyes and just it was wonderful. So I love the cast that we have. Gabriel Mullen is also, he was in Fiddler, and I think he's just incredible. And
he's a former student of mine too.
Really?
Yeah.
That's okay.
Which is a treat, right?
Okay, I see. So we're playing favorites.
No, not quite.
I'm joking.
Got to earn the role, right?
No,
but it was a treat to be able to cast a student, right? I had a number of students come in, which was also awesome, right? And so that was great to see them all come in and see them audition and whatnot. And then it was even more of a treat for one of them to land it, to do their job. And and not to say that all didn't do their job, they did.
Yeah.
But for all the components to come together and it worked, I was really proud. I was proud of everybody in that audition. So. That everybody came in.
I don't know why it just clicked in my head, and I'm sorry to keep bringing up the past, but
that's okay.
The play that goes wrong, Alyssa was also in.
Absolutely.
That's amazing.
Absolutely. That's part of what we do, right? We when you become familiar with people and you see each other in each other's work and you understand each other's process, whether it be as an actor working together as another actor or director actor, you get a little bit more information, right? So yes, you have them audition for you, but then it's also like they're auditioning for me, but I also know, like, I've also worked on a show with them and I know what their process is and I know how creative they are and that they can do X, Y, and Z. And so, yeah, you want to work with some people that you've worked with before because they're good.
Right.
So, having worked with Alyssa on Play That Goes Wrong, and she was game for anything there, and she was a hoot. And so it was a real easy cast there as well.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
And I think it's also, about doing good work. And it's kind of what we talked about when we had our college night about you take all the opportunities you can, you get out there, you network, you get in front of as many people as possible, and you do good work. But also, like, at the end of the day, I feel like everybody just wants to make things with their friends, wants to just have fun with their friends. And so when you build those connections and you have a really good relationship with them, and then you're given the opportunity to work with them, you're like, yeah, of course, why wouldn't I do that? So, no, that's really cool. And I love seeing all of you guys come together. What are some challenges that you've already experienced so far with directing this show? Because
this cast has come in so well prepared that some of the stuff that I was nervous about the gibberish, and there's a ton of gibberish in the show that is there, and JJ came in like a pro.
Right.
I keep saying that about him. It's true. And that's been awesome because he came in with so much of it prepared, and then for us to be able to then quickly shape it and put it together, I was like, well, that was going to be a whole night, and now it's not. So that's been a treat.
Well, and that was the other thing that I wanted to ask you about was how do you go about like directing gibberish? I imagine, well, and again, because I don't do it, and I didn't read the script. I saw a production on YouTube, but is it written in the script a specific way?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So, and funny that you watched it on YouTube because, and we were talking about this last night in rehearsal. In the script, it is very specifically written gibberish.
Okay.
They are nonsensical words that have been crafted by Larry Shue.
Okay.
And when you actually figure out phonetically what they sound like, they have some funny jokes inside of them, right? If you put the sounds together and then you hear them and they run them together, you go, oh my gosh, he's not saying gobbledygook. He's saying, dumb as a box of rocks, but it sounds like dumb as a box of rocks. And you're like, what? Oh, he just said dumb as a box of rocks.
Gotcha. Okay.
But it sounded like some foreign word, right? There's little, it's crafted specifically. And when it's not, in the stage directions, he just says, and these characters double talk for a moment while the character walks off stage. So there are moments in there where the gibberish is absolutely made up, but I'd say 95% of the gibberish is scripted by Larry Shue. And I said the YouTube thing because you always kind of check out if there's stuff on YouTube. Great artists steal, right? Oh, it was a good idea. And some people are saying stuff and you're like, that's not at all what was written in the script. They just completely made up.
Interesting. Okay.
And I feel like, that's, you're doing yourself a disservice. Like Larry Shue wrote it for a reason. He kind of gave you a roadmap. And if you trust it, it's funny. And JJ obviously is in the same boat as me, and so it was wonderful to see how he started to craft it right away. And I was like, oh man, he's making sense of it right away, and it's really clear and it's a lot of fun. So I think you'll understand it just because he makes so much sense of it, and he knows what he's saying. That he takes you on a story and he takes you on a journey with some of his ridiculousness, which is a lot of fun. Yeah, so that was, again, I was nervous about it just because I know as an actor to memorize nonsensical words that have no context is incredibly hard. I mean, nonsensical words and real dialogue for me are the two things. When I say real, I mean like documentary theater. Like if I record something and then we actually like transcribe that, trying to memorize people's actual speech patterns is ridiculously hard because nobody speaks perfectly.
Right.
As a playwright usually puts sentence structure and thought and all that stuff, and it makes it logical. If you actually look at the way we talk, it's a mess. And so when you try to memorize that, you're like, I did a production of the Laramie Project, and I was like, that was the hardest thing to memorize because it was real people's words. And it was also hard to memorize because you're like, I can't screw this up.
Right.
That's what they said, right? So I have to say the right words. You should always say the right words, but even more so, you're like, these are real people's words. So yeah, I was really nervous about what it was going to be to have gibberish on the show. But again, JJ knocking it out of the park.
Yeah, and it's interesting because when I was thinking about that and watching the video on YouTube, I took a small acting class in college, and at one point we had to, we were just given like a sentence and a motivation for it, and so that's all you could say was that one sentence, but you're trying to get your goal out of the scene or whatever it is. And so I imagine it's difficult, or it can feel the same way when when it's nonsensical words and you can't use them to get what you want or where you need to. And so I imagine a lot more physical comedy comes out of that as well.
Yeah, there's some very famous physical comedies and physical comedy scenes in the show. The breakfast scene is probably the most famous one, and where the two characters, Ellard and Charlie, kind of have breakfast together and they discover how breakfast food works and how utensils work, and it's a dumb show. It's a dumb show is in the sense that it's silent, right? They figure things out non-verbally, and it's a hoot. It's a lot of fun to watch. And a lot of that is, again, it's scripted by Larry Shue. He wrote out in his stage directions what he saw happening. And that's important to know. Sometimes, you have a playwright and there's stage directions. Were those stage directions the playwrights, or were those transcribed from the original production?
Oh, I see.
And these are his. These are his stage directions. Like, he specifically has given you a lot of, this is what he sees happening in these nonverbal moments, and so that's important. So it's just an extenuation of his words,
right?
And so we're sticking to that.
It's obviously this balancing act of having your vision for the show and what you want for it, but also making sure that you're doing right by the playwright and everything that they had written into it.
Yeah, I think it's just a balance you have to play with, right? You have what you think works, and you trust the playwright's intentions, but then you also, you question some of it. You're like, what do they think in there? Did they want it to be this? Did they leave it a little bit open-ended? Did they give me like an option? Okay, I think they've given me an option. So it is open for interpretation here. I can kind of lean one way or the other. And so I think there's a couple moments like that where we've taken our version goes this way and other versions might go that way. And that's okay. It doesn't go against what the playwright was
right,
wanting,
as long
right?
as
And I think that's always important, that we have to respect what the playwright wrote and respect those intentions and say those words and do those things. And we have to remember this play was written in 1984, right? So there are some references that are like dated and, would not hold in 2025, and so we have to remember, like, this is a reflection of history. It's what time was. Hopefully, as a society, we have improved, that we've grown, that we're more accepting, we're more sensitive, and we wouldn't say some of those things, but we can't change that in today's production. We have to reflect where we were so that we learn from that and we don't do it again, right? Because this play, while it is very funny, deals with some dark topics, right? It has some heavy things in it, and so we have to make sure that we're not glossing over them, that we're honest about them, but we have to, and inside of that honesty, we see the humanity in it, and in the humanity, that allows us to understand those people, and then we can laugh with them as opposed to laughing at them. Yeah.
With all of the dark kind of topics in this show, I know that there must be conversations that are happening behind the scenes and in rehearsals on how do we handle these topics, or what kind of choices are we making? How do you go about answering those? And I imagine it can be uncomfortable to kind of talk about those topics. How do you make the room open and honest in that way to have a comfortable conversation or honest conversation about those topics?
Great question. So some of the stuff that's come up has been, again, I always come from a place of circumstance. What are the circumstances of the character? And so what are the questions we have to ask, right? One of the characters, his wife is cheating on him. So we have to start with, okay, why is this happening? And why is he staying in the marriage? And all the, we ask the questions. Like, we have to imagine those circumstances, imagine for himself where he comes from, why he's still in it, he's a faithful guy, all of these things. And by us grounding ourselves in those truths, we then understand why he's been stuck in this place. Otherwise, if we don't, then it's very surface for that character. And then we don't believe that he's actually hurt. And if we don't believe he's hurt, then we can't feel his pain, or we can't feel his joy when the pain goes away, right? So we just have to understand those things. The big dark topic in the play is the KKK, right? And I had conversations with my students about this, because I had students that were auditioning for it, and they read the play and they were like, oh my gosh, I said, yeah. And they were like, what are you gonna do? And I was like, what do you mean we're gonna do? They're like, the end of the play. And I said, yeah. They're like, but it has the KKK in it. I said, you're right, it does. We have to bring them on stage, just like the playwright says to do, right? Like, again, it's a reflection of what the circumstances are, where they are. They're in the deep south of Georgia in 1984, and this happens, right? But again, it's a comedy, and so they're the bad guys. There's always got to be, you have to have a bad guy in some situations, and they are the bad guys, and it's a comedy, so of course they lose, and the good guy prevails, and we have a lot of fun with it. So it's not like we're celebrating those bad things. We're going to call them for what they are, and in this situation they lose, right? So that's a good thing. But it's also a reminder of, like, there's been hate in our world for a long time, and unfortunately it's still there. But I think that it's nice when we're able to have a situation where we get to see the bad guys lose, and so it feels good to laugh and be able to enjoy the triumphs of our underdogs in those situations. And so it's not fun to have to, obviously those are very iconic costumes. It's just like Sound of Music. There's a bunch of Nazis in Sound of Music, and so someone has to play the Nazi, and here it is with this one. Someone has to play these characters and put on those robes, which is kind of icky. But you remind yourself, like, in order for us to have a villain lose, someone has to play it. The thing I always say is someone has to play Judas. We have to, if we're going to tell the story of Christ, we have to have Judas, right? It may not be your favorite thing to do, but someone has to do it to tell the other side of the story, right? To have the hero. So I think that we've handled it well, and again, nothing but pros, nothing but consummate professionals. I think our audiences will be, of course, shocked, because it's hard not to be when those characters walk on stage. Right. But they'll also, cheer loudly as they get their comeuppance.
Yeah, I can't imagine being in that situation, and I don't know if you can tell, I'm not an actor, so but I imagine it can be uncomfortable, and it can kind of take a toll on you to have to, like, put on that role, or to take, but remembering that it is to tell this story and to do justice to this story, there has to be somebody in that role, and there has to be or else I guess the good guys don't win.
Yeah. I mean, if this was a drama and we were
Yeah.
dealing with a lot darker themes and there wasn't maybe as much joy inside of it, it would be a lot different conversations that we would be
Yeah.
having, right?
Okay.
And it would take some more reminders on the parts of the actors. And, there are a lot of techniques that we have out there as, speaking from an academic standpoint, in terms of how self-care cues and things that we do as actors to prepare ourselves, know that we are entering into a role, know that we are performing a role, things that we can do at the end of the night that we can then check out of that role, that we can see each other and we can tell the other person, hi, it's Kevin again. I'm here. Good to see you. I'm thankful for you. I appreciate you. Like, I'm letting go of that monster that I just had to play on stage and that's gone. And I'm here with you and I appreciate you. And now we're going to go get in our car and we're going to drive home and I'm going to eat Taco Bell on the way and it's going to be okay. Right.
Yeah.
As opposed to, I'm done with the show and I'm still in this dark place and now I'm getting into my car and I don't like this. If you're holding on to that and it's going home with you, that's not safe, right? That's not good for you. So we have to give ourselves techniques that we can remind ourselves of how do we de-roll at the end of the night, right? And we let go of some of those things if that is something that someone needs. Not all actors need that. Some actors are like, switch, it's off, I'm done. Okay, I'm fine. Some people, it sticks with them. So we can give them those techniques to let go of it.
I'm so glad you brought that up because that's an aspect of theater or acting that I didn't even know that there were techniques to check out of a role.
Sure.
So that's incredible. Wow. We're going to do our last little section, the lightning round.
Okay, lightning round.
My first question is, what is one of your biggest mishaps on stage?
Oh, boy. As a actor, director, anything?
You can pick which one keeps you up at night.
None of them keep me up at night.
Okay.
I have a great one from college. I had a great one. We did a production of Moon Over Buffalo. So Moon Over Buffalo, for those that don't know, Ken Lugwood, great comedy. And part of the show is in the green room of a theater and the other part of the show is on stage. So in our production, the green room was the ground floor. And then the back part of the set on top was the stage. So there was a couple moments where we came up onto that stage. So we were elevated. We were about 8 feet off the ground. And we would act and we would do the shows. And on the back of that stage, there was a little pony wall. When we say pony wall, it's only about up to the backs of your legs, real small. Just enough to so you know where the edge is if you were going backwards.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a tall guy. And so that wall was right about where the backs of my knees are.
Oh, great.
And so my character is doing Cyrano de Bergerac, and he's supposed to be doing Private Lives. And they're doing shows in rep. And he is very, very intoxicated and has totally put on the wrong costume. And he's out there wearing the big nose from Cyrano, and he's wielding a sword, and he's being silly. And realizes that he's in the wrong play. But of course, he's accusing the other person, you're in the wrong play. And it's my character's wife, and I'm supposed to grab her wig and rip her wig off. And we've done this every night in rehearsal, and it's all gone fine. But on opening night, she wore a wig cap for the first time. She'd never worn a wig cap before. So when I went to grab her hair, the wig just slipped right off. And it just just enough that it made me kind of just miss a step for a half second.
Yeah.
Well, I bumped that back wall with my knees and it dead-legged me. And I flipped straight upside down over the back of the set and I locked my knees and I was hanging on to that pony wall with my legs upside down. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And I'm like, what's happening? What's happening? And all I hear are footsteps. Tut, 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 tut. And there's a little freshman ASM underneath it going, if you fall, I got you.
Oh my.
Shout out to Richard Champlin. And then all of a sudden I see hands come flying over from up top because there was other people on stage with me and they grab me and they pull me up. Well, literally 3 lines later in the script, my character is supposed to fall off stage. He's supposed to fall off the front of the stage. So I come up and I kind of stumble and I do my 2 steps and I get to the front edge of the stage and I go, whoa, whoa, whoa. And then lights go out and you hear a crash and nobody knew that it was a mistake. Everybody thought that was part of the play, except for the director sitting in the audience going, yay, yay. So they were the ones who actually were maybe panicking and having having that thing that they were up all night about.
Right.
But that was the most terrifying mishap I've had on stage.
I was going to say, that you actually...
I was for sure that whole thing was going to fall. Because I remember doing a little bit of a sit up and I heard the wood go, and I was like, oh no, no. And then they pulled me up.
Yeah, this is where I live now. I'll just stay here.
Yeah, this is it. This is where I am. Forever and always.
Continue.
Nope. Nope.
Why should people come see The Foreigner?
You should come to laugh, come to enjoy yourself. It is a comedy. It's one of the great American comedies. It's been on stage for 40 years around the nation, making people laugh every time. And come watch and find out what it is to be human. I think that's a great theme for the play. What it is to be human, what it is to be a hero, what it is to be seen and be listened to. And hopefully you'll come and sit and listen and lean in and laugh out loudly.
It's going to be a hoot. Okay, my last question. Mm-hmm. We're doing The Foreigner.
Yes.
The Englishman doesn't speak English, and he gets privy to all of these secrets and has to find a way to get them out. If you were in this rural lodge in Georgia, what's a secret that you might fear would come out?
Well, I think that I would be the one time that I was terrified. Yes. I can't believe I said that out loud.
Yep. Thank you guys so much for listening to this episode of By George. Kevin, thank you so much for being on this episode.
Yeah, it was a pleasure being here. Absolutely.
Please come see The Foreigner. It is opening on January 29th and it runs through February 23rd, I believe. So make sure you come and get your tickets. We are filming in our photo booth right now. I know it's looking a little...
it's in process.
It's in process. It will be done by the time we open the show. So make sure when you come take your photo in the photo booth. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll see you guys next time.
Yeah. Bye-bye. Blosny.
This has been By George, an 80 Players at the George Theater podcast, hosted and produced by Miranda Zapes. Listen anywhere you listen to podcasts and follow us on Instagram at By George Theater. That's THEATRE. Sure to like, share, and subscribe. And By George, we'll see y'all next time.
Yeah, I was going to say, I know you did stuff year one.
Right.
Or was it year two you did it?
No, it was year two. Because I wasn't here year one.
That's right. It was okay. Yeah.
So I interviewed Kevin, and I think I interviewed Hannah as the stage manager.
You did Swayze. Olivia.
Oh, I did do Olivia.
Yeah,
oh my goodness, I forgot.
Yeah.
What did I
think Hannah was maybe like Steel Magnolia.
I love how much you know about this.
Question mark. Okay, I think.
I think you're right.
I was scrolling back through on my Spotify and I was like, let's see.
Oh, okay.
Because I was curious.
Yeah, I love how much you know about the podcast, though. I'm not saying that you've listened to every episode, but
I have not. I
can't.
I know of it.